Welcome to Talking Buffalo, featuring conversations with guests from around the world of sports, media, pop culture, and all things Buffalo. With your host, Patrick Moran.
All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to Talking Buffalo podcast, part of the Blue Wire Network. Today is Thursday, February 16th. Thank you guys so much for locking in, whether you're watching this on YouTube, whether you're listening to this on one or several podcasting platforms. Appreciate you all. Like I said, well, I'm taping this late on Tuesday night, so hopefully I don't get confused when I'm taping this, nor my guest, recurring guest. I know you love when I say that too, recurring guest. Joe from Queens at Buffalo Wins on Twitter. What's up, buddy?
I'm a special. I think I maybe have used this example before, but I'm going to use it again. I'm a special attraction. Like, we love to talk about wrestling. I'm like Andre the Giant that comes into the territory. Like, you know, Aaron Quinn and you know, Yurden is like Hulk Hogan. Aaron Quinn's like, you know, Barry Horowitz. Like, they're always going to be there in the territory. And then I come in as Andre the Giant, and I'm like, I'm going to, you know, eat some people, and then I'm going to leave and then go to a different territory. That's kind of how I am. I got to ask you real quick before you start plugging things, because I know that's what you said, and I don't listen to you. What's up with the bears behind you in the video? Is that new? Like the two bears behind you?
It's old, and then I got rid of it for a while, but then I brought it back. I know this is going to sound, well, I've said this once on the show before, but a lot of people probably didn't hear it. I'll tell you, man. And sounds a little cheesy and mushy, but honestly, that if you're watching this, by the way, on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, hit that like button, because we are working on building up our subscriber count. It just went over 1,000 subscribers, in fact, on the YouTube channel. But anyway, what Joe's referring to, if you're watching this on the video side, I have a picture of two bears behind me. They're symbolic to me. The big bear is me, the fat guy, the big fat guy, and the little bear, even though he's bigger and stronger than me at this point, is my son, Shane. And if you notice in the video, they got their backs to each other. It's because they're watching each other's backs. So that's where it's symbolic for me. It's like, I'm watching his back. He's always watching mine. So I figured, it caught my eye when I think it was maybe at Hobby Lobby or something, about 6 months or so. I guess that's what this reminds me of. So put it up there. Plus it's blue, and I kind of, they got a lot of blue going on here in the background and stuff like that. I just felt like it was a good fit.
I dig, as someone who's a producer, I dig your background. It's a very, I see you put a lot of thought in it, way more thought into this than giving me a rundown, because you give me nothing when we come on here except like
a note
on a bar napkin, like, oh, we're going to talk about this. But like, everything to a T, from the lava lamp, which is kind of weird, to, is that EJ Manuel? Oh, that's Josh Allen behind you. It looked like EJ Manuel from where I am. You do a very good job.
We've never talked about it since you brought it up here. And,
no, I don't want to talk about my TV career. If you're about
No, but people, right, the background and stuff like that, just for you want to know what's going on. So I'll tell you, man. And again, if you were listening, I'm sorry if you're listening on this audio, go check out the video later. But anyway, I'll make this quick. Yeah, I do have a blue lava lamp, Josh, the Talking Buffalo logo, a couple mics up. On the desk, I have this little notepad. It's a Bills Mafia like notepad, which I actually do use a coffee cup. Check this out. This is one of my favorite things. I got to stay on top of the mics. Again, not everyone's watching this. This is one of those Pop Funko dolls. I'll put it up close here. You can see it here. Whitney
Houston.
My favorite female singer. Not even female, just maybe favorite singer all time.
We may have talked about this before with Whitney. You want to know, like, the definition of like bittersweet? It's like when people talk about the anthem that she sang at Super Bowl 25, because it's like, it is great. And then I'm like, my God, it's like basically before like one of the most traumatic things of my life as a kid, as Super Bowl 25. Like, couldn't she have done it like 29? Like, we were out of it, or if we, God forbid, we won one, and I always think about that whenever everyone's
also,
like, it's a great anthem.
Besides being the Bills' first Super Bowl, by the way, she also said that it was during the midst of the Persian Gulf War too. Anyway, so I got 3 bobbleheads behind me too: Jim Kelly, Marv Levy, and Fred Smerlas. And
Fred Smerlas. Wow.
Yeah. Look at Fred, man.
Wow, that's awesome.
You go. Yeah,
was Fred Smerlas? You're old. Was Fred Smerlas better than Kyle Williams?
No. I don't
Kyle
think
Williams
so.
is better. So you would
I think
pick
Kyle Williams. Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, I would pick Kyle Williams. As you
All
can
right.
tell, by the way, Joe said there's not really a lot of notes when we get him on the show,
Yeah,
and this is pretty
doesn't
evident
care.
really early. This is so chaos always ensues. We are going to talk. I do have a couple notes, so don't let him completely lie to you. We're going to have some Bills takeaways. I want to get some of your Bills takeaways. I've been talking about a couple of mine for the past week or so. So we'll talk about a couple of your biggest takeaways now that the Super Bowl's over, now that the season is officially over. Just again, your biggest takeaways from the season and maybe going into the off season. We'll talk about that a little bit. I also want to spend at least a couple minutes talking about an AFC East that I think, and again, we'll get more into this shortly. I think the AFC East is going to be a bloodbath next year. I really, truly do, man. I think all these teams are going to be much better, especially the Jets. And again, we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Before that, though, so next week, and I got to plug this. And I'm not, you know what? For as often as I've done this podcast now, which, by the way, part of what I'm plugging is next week is 5 years. I'm doing this podcast for 5 years come next week. I always hate self-promoting and plugging. I really do. At least on this show, it bothers me. I don't know why it does. I know you got to do it.
You promote to me all the freaking time. I got to hear about you bragging about it all the
I do
time.
it on social
you can't
media
do it
all
on
the
here.
time. I don't like doing it on the podcast much. But anyway, next week is the 5-year anniversary of Talking Buffalo, which, by the way, was called originally, for old school people who've been around from day one, it was the Moran podcast. I think maybe 2 years or so before I changed it to Talking Buffalo. But anyway, lot going on next week. Next Tuesday or Wednesday, I'm not sure what day, but I know I'm taping it on the 5-year anniversary. I got my 3rd annual Podcasters Roundtable. That's with Greg Thompson from Cover One, Joe Marino from Locked On Bills, and Bruce Nolan from Buffalo Rumblings. We have a roundtable. We've done this now 3 straight years. We don't talk about anything sports or Buffalo Bills. It's all about just podcasting.
All dorks. A lot of people. All
dorks. Cool. Tech shit, geek shit.
Not as cool as me.
Some stuff that we've learned about this trade over the last handful of years. It's a lot of fun. So that'll be next week. And then the big thing is on Thursday, starting next Thursday, February 23rd, live Imperial Pizza PM, as that comes up on the screen, a graphic for Imperial Pizza. But anyway, at Imperial every week, 7:30 Thursday nights, they're going to be taping the show live. It'll be live streamed, which I've never, ever done a live stream before. We're going to be doing that every week. And then it'll drop in podcast form on Friday mornings. Again, that's Imperial Pizza in South Buffalo. Going to have a different guest on every week. This is something I used to do a lot when the first couple of years of this podcast, is have different guests on all the time. Kind of got away from that, getting back into it. I love the vibe of sitting down with somebody in person. You know, doing these is cool the way we're doing this right now. There's just a different element when you're sitting next to somebody. And by the way, as much as, I don't want to say as much as you hate on the media, because a lot of it's ball busting. Some of it is general disdain, because you do have issues with a lot of media people. But I'll say this. My first guest is somebody I know you don't have an issue with. He's one of the few that I know you like. My man, Tyler Dunn, your boy Tyler Dunn, is going to be live with me from Imperial next Thursday. And then, like I said, from there, I got Damone Harris, time in high school graduate, UB graduate, Super Bowl champion Damone Harris. He's going to be with me early on. Like I said, just a bunch of guests, but looking forward to doing
When am I coming on? When are you going to buy me some wings?
You going to be in Buffalo anytime? Well, then shut up.
Probably not. Probably not for a while. Why don't you come to Queens? Why don't you come to New York City? I'll take you to a wing place over here.
I'd love to go to New York City. I really would. I'd love to go to New York City. I've still never been to Yankee Stadium, the new Yankee Stadium, since, what was it, 2009 or 2010, something like that. I haven't been to the stadium. I went there the last year before the new stadium was erected. Was it across the street, right? Anyway, yeah, I have not been to the new stadium.
You can get tickets for cheap there. The baseball tickets there are very cheap if you get them on StubHub. It's kind of it's kind of mind-boggling a little bit how cheap the baseball tickets are here. Oh, look at the Game of Thrones mug. I like that.
Nice little Game of Thrones. My son is binging that. He's binging it with my wife. He's never seen it. Yeah, he's like in season 5 or 6.
Did you watch the new? Did you watch the new one? I'm reading the book. I've been very slowly prodding through it, and I have avoided all spoilers. I have no idea what's happened.
I watched the first. You saw about Joe saw about House of Dragons. I watched the first premiere episode. I did watch the first, but then I stopped watching, and it wasn't because I wasn't interested. I got busy. A couple things came up, and next thing you know, it was 3, 4, 5 episodes in, and then I just said, I'm going to at some point. I get a little jealous when a show that is that epically good, like Game of Thrones, somebody gets to experience it for the first time. It's pretty cool to with him. Like, I'm not watching all the episodes. My wife is with him. But a couple of the big ones, like Red Wedding, I don't really want to get into details because there's some people probably on the show who might watch it.
Oh, you can get into details. It's like 7 years later. Like, the hell.
There's just, the big moments. You know what I'm talking about. And,
Sure.
and seeing their reaction because you know what's coming and they don't. It's really cool.
Yeah.
All right.
It was the first. Sorry to interrupt. It was the first series me and my wife, when we first started dating, binged. Like, I was like, I had the first turn. I was like, we're binging this. Because it's like my favorite series of all time. Because she had never seen it before.
The craziest thing for me with Game of Thrones is I hate those kind of shows. I'm not a sci-fi guy. I'm not a fantasy guy. I don't like any of the Harry Potter movies, which Aaron killed me for that last week. That's his favorite shit ever. And he was really pissing me about that. But like Lord of the Rings, all that stuff, it does nothing for me. I don't read the books. I don't really read a lot, period, to be honest with you. But anyway, for whatever reason, that show it captivated me. It caught me and it got me. And I think it was just because
you and I used to sorry to interrupt. You and I used to talk about it on the pod. You're celebrating 5 years next week. You and I used to talk about it all the time, like when it ended, which was, I think 2019 was when it ended. It was right before the pandemic.
I remember we did most of the episode one week was dedicated to the finale of Game of Thrones. I just like the way
that shit show finale. That finale sucked. Anyway,
love it or hate it, the show though, something was always happening. Like I said, and if you watch it early on, pretty much right from the get-go, there was no like character. I mean, there was character building, but it was around a lot of action as well. Like I'm saying, it was no like slow burns. Like Breaking Bad is a great all-time show for a lot of people, but the first season of that was almost unwatchable. It was so boring. It took time to really build the characters up and learn about them, the development of them. Game of Thrones just comes at you in waves, pretty much from the start, too. So, anyway, all right. So before we get into some specific Buffalo Bills thing, I do want to say this. Usually it's you who's fighting with everyone on Twitter, especially when it comes to Buffalo Bills stuff. On Tuesday, which is, again, we're taping this Tuesday night, it was actually kind of me.
You started some shit? What happened?
I did. Well, I wasn't intending to start fights with Buffalo Bills fans by no means, but I just... and I think you know this about me. I am a Bills fan. I don't try to pretend I'm not a Bills fan, but on this podcast, when I'm behind this mic, regardless of Josh Allen being behind me or the occasional standing Buffalo Bills hat I might have on the show when I'm doing the videos or whatever, I am objective, and I'm not afraid to criticize the Bills, and I'm certainly not afraid to heap praise on other teams and players when it's warranted. Patrick Mahomes just won another Super Bowl, and it's not one. Now, look, we've talked about this, and not on the podcast, but we've talked about this in private conversations, and it kind of leads into what I'm saying here, how you have an issue, and we don't need to name specific people or even outlets, but you have an issue when it's a very, very tiny percentage of people who are bitching about something, and then a media outlet or a person will make it sound like that's everybody who's doing that. You know what I mean? You take issue.
Yes.
So
pet peeve,
I get that. In this case, though, I was heaping praise on Patrick Mahomes and just talking about how unbelievably great this guy is. He's the best quarterback in the NFL, best player in the NFL. And let's see how things play out over the next 6, 8, 10, 11 years or whatever before we go anointing him the best of all time. He's certainly on his way to it, though, or having a much to say about it. Anyway, I thought he played magnificent in the Super Bowl. And apparently there's some Bills fans out there who don't agree. And the sentiment was that Patrick Mahomes winning the MVP was pretty lame, and that the numbers weren't great. And, maybe it could have been Kelsey. A lot of people even said Jalen Hurts should have still been MVP, even though they lost. So, by the way, let me ask you that side question here. Should a player, Jalen Hurts, but by the way, minus that fumble, played fantastic. He held his own. And if there were any questions about does he belong in the upper echelon of quarterbacks in the NFL, I think Jalen Hurts completely answered that on Sunday. I thought he was great. One mistake, it is what it is. You know what I mean? And it happened in the first half. There was plenty of time to erase that. But anyway, I don't want to get away from what I'm asking you here. Should a player, not for a season, in a game, like a Super Bowl or Game 7 of a Stanley Cup, whatever it may be, should a player from a losing team ever be the MVP of a game? Like, for the example, the Super Bowl. Let's forget about the other sports. Let's stick to football here. You're playing in the Super Bowl. No matter how good your stats are, should a player ever on a losing team be MVP? I don't think so. You tell me.
I don't think so either. I remember. I think the only time anyone has ever won was like, I think a Cowboys player won it in the 70s. Like, it's the last time I remember a guy won for a losing.
I don't
team.
know if that's the last case. You might be right.
I think one person did. I'm pretty sure it was a Cowboys player who won it. I remember like there was like discussions, quote unquote, like Super Bowl 25. We were just talking about that. Like Thurman was a better player than OJ Anderson.
He was the best player in the field. He was
absolutely the best player, but they lost. And I agree with you. Like you can't. Yeah, I agree with that. It's only happened like once. And how many close Super Bowls have we had where like the losing player won? Like it's
most valuable player, not most bestest player. Like Thurman was the best player on the field in Super Bowl 25. You can make a case, and a very strong case, that Jalen Hurts might have been the best player on the field on that day. But how can you be the MVP if you lose the game? Because you lost the game. All right, so you know what? If Jalen Hurts doesn't play, well, if you don't play, they lose by 4 touchdowns. Who cares if you lose by 4 touchdowns or 1 point? You still don't win the game. You don't win the Super Bowl. Now, if it's the course of a season, then you can have a case. A guy from a kind of shitty team could be an MVP if he's way better than everybody else. It's happened in baseball a couple of times. I know Alex Rodriguez, when he was with the Rangers, won a couple MVPs. Team kind of was like, meh, but he was phenomenal. So maybe in the NFL, you could have a guy on a team that's only 9-8 or whatever be MVP, because you'd be like, you take him off the team, this team wouldn't win 3 games. I get that. But in one game in the Super Bowl, when it's all on the line, you cannot be the MVP if you lose the game. Simple as that.
Yeah.
As for
I'm
Mahomes,
with you on that.
I was going to say, as for Patrick Mahomes, Joe, it's, dude, what is your expectation supposed to be of this guy? Okay, he had 182 yards, which is the biggest criticism that I heard. He only had 182 yards passing. Okay, well, he had 182 yards passing. He had 3 touchdown passes. And then the comeback to that was, well, 2 of them were wide open guys. Okay, good. Are you gonna penalize Patrick Mahomes because they scheme guys open? So he had 3 touchdown passes, 182 yards, 0 turnovers. Let me say that again. 0 turnovers. He was sacked 0 times. He avoided sacks. The line was great, but there were some occasions where he was pressured. He escaped it. He got out. Because guess what? He also had 44 yards rushing. If Josh Allen has 44 yards rushing, Bills fans just go nuts over that shit half the time. So where are you coming from if you're one of these people? And again, this isn't just like 1 or 2 people, because otherwise I'd be like, you know what? I'm fighting with a bunch of, I'm fighting with 1 or 2 people, and I'm making it sound like I'm fighting with a whole contingent of Bills Mafia. But I'm telling you now, there was a good half dozen, 10, maybe more people who kept coming at me all day on Tuesday saying that Mahomes either A, didn't deserve MVP, or B, was a lame MVP. Like, it wasn't a great MVP performance. Now, maybe compared to, some other MVPs on past Super Bowls, okay, maybe. But again, what more? Oh, one other thing. Guess what? Dude couldn't even barely walk, man. He was hurt. And he got hurt again before the half.
I can maybe hear someone saying Kelsey should have been it, but like, look, he said he had like 186 yards passing. He also ran, a lot, which he had some key runs. Yeah. So, look, okay. I know it's like a small population that was going at with you, but let's be frank. The Bills Twitter is not objective when it comes to talking about other teams at all. I don't
know that any fan base is.
You're right, whatever. But I think there's so many things that kind of irritate me. I remember going back to when the Bills played the Chiefs in the regular season. There was all this debate about who was better, Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. There were a lot of people on Bills Twitter, like the content people, were very angry at this comparison, and I didn't understand why. And sometimes I think the Bills Twitter people they're the first in line to shit on another team where we're better than them, or to defend themselves. Like, oh, Brandon Beane's really good at drafting because other teams have issues, so we should ignore that. But when it comes to when it's like a case of, hey, this team or this player is better than you, they kind of tend to just ignore that, and like they're like, oh, they'll ignore that argument. And I think people get a little, Bill's Twitter gets skeptical about Mahomes, or like you got to constantly stick up for Josh. and they want
Right.
to shit on Mahomes whenever they can. And
It
yeah,
brings-
you're right. Maybe there's fans and like whoever the rivalry is the Chiefs, what I think is us, but like Bengals fans might feel the same way about him, with Burrow versus him. But no, he should have won the MVP. It's come on, like the guy had a broken leg. It was Willis Reed basically out there, doing what he did. But
well, in fairness to some fans, I was going to just say, in fairness to some fans said he should not have won MVP, and I told you a lot of them said Jalen Hurts, but there were other fans who said, all right, well, he was MVP, but it was just a lame performance in comparison to others. And I'm like, well, again, they played a number 1 seed with a great defense that has dominated a lot of teams, and he played with an injured ankle and a wide receiving unit for Kansas City that was pretty banged up as well. And I just don't know what your expectation of the guy is supposed to be at this point, man, when you factor in all that stuff, Joe. You know what?
Dude, there's 2 years ago, I remember in the Super Bowl when they lost, and I remember he did this play where he it looked like he was diving in front. He was diving and he threw it at the same time. Like literally, he hydroplaned. And there was people on Bill's Twitter who were like angry about like, oh, Josh Allen could do that, and then like they would get quote tweeted and like 1,000 likes. And I was like, what the hell is this? Like, you people are weirdos. Like,
I remember that.
like, yeah, like just they're at this time of year, like, I in a perfect world when it comes to me being on this podcast, I would like to be on like once a month, because I do not want to talk about the Bills every week. I would lose my mind. Like, I don't tweet as much about them during the offseason or February or like big times I come on and care, because I think you'll lose your mind, because it's like the same routine. Like, we're already talking about the draft on Bill's Twitter. We're already talking about like excuses as to why Brandon Beane's a good draft guy or whatever. Like, and I'm just like, I need to take that's why I'm like once a week I'm gonna care about the Bills on Twitter. And I get it's different. I get for you it's different. You run a podcast. You gotta be on here twice a week, 3 times a week. Same with Aaron Quinn, all you dorks. But like, I don't, and I'm just like, I don't need to like think about them every day I wake up, like to provide a content. Because I think it's not good for your health, if that makes sense. I don't know. But,
it does to an extent. And I'll also say this too. I think Bills fan, by the way, Joe from Queens and I are doing nothing to endear ourselves to some Buffalo Bills fans on this podcast today. But I think every fan base has a portion, and I think it's the same if you were to be involved in any fan base. But things that range from, like when Cincinnati hounded Buffalo, and I'm not talking about Eli Apple, who went overboard, and that was a dick move. But just the other general shit talking, refund Joe Burrow and Tyler Boyd, those guys were talking shit. I'm thinking in my mind, okay, it's kind of funny, because I remember in the beginning of the season when the Bills were curb stomping everybody, and a guy would punt. I remember the Kansas City Chiefs game. I don't remember the goddamn punter's name for the Chiefs, but it was like, oh, you punt? Can't relate to that. You know what I mean? Because the Bills were not.
Yeah, everyone's gonna talk shit. I mean,
everyone
talks
shit.
Yeah,
you don't, and that's the fans. And you don't think for a second if this was a divisional round and the Bills had to go to Cincinnati and they put the boots to the Bengals in Cincinnati, you don't think Shaq Lawson and Jordan Phillips and Stephon Diggs and Josh and these boys are going to be talking some shit to them? They would. They should. I would. So don't be mad when the shoe is on the other foot. But to your point about Mahomes, I want to kind of go back to that for a second, and Josh Allen. Aaron Quinn and I last week on the podcast had a good conversation about LeBron and Michael Jordan. And after LeBron broke the scoring record last week, the first thing I did, which was an absolutely idiotic tweet from me, is I said, congratulations to the second best player of all time. Couldn't let the guy just enjoy the moment. I immediately went right to the Michael Jordan comparison and said, in a tweet without saying his name, Michael's better. I got called out for it by a couple people. Jay Spence on Rumblings called me out for it. They're 100% right. Instead of letting the guy just enjoy the moment and greatness, I had to make it about a comparison. And it's a comparison that I hate LeBron and Michael, because they're two different types of players. But with Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes, same kind of deal, man. I hate the comparison. It's like, can't we just celebrate one of these guys without always constantly having to compare to the other? Because every time Josh does something great, the first thing we do is talk about Pat Mahomes, or vice versa. If you're a Bills fan or Kansas City fan.
All right.
No?
Let me break this down for you. Okay. The LeBron Jordan thing, that's very hard to do because they played in different eras. Okay.
And
so
like I watched players.
Yes. Well, they're kind of I get the body type, but they're both like guards, small forwards.
Okay.
whatever. It's a completely different era. Like back in the
Mhm.
'90s, it's the same with the football. Like you can't compare Brady to Montana. Totally different eras. You can just say like this guy's the best player of his era. It's very simple to do that. Now, Mahomes, Allen, they're not in different eras. They're in the same.
Agreed.
I love talking debates. Like who's better? That's what I was getting at before when I talked about how like in that regular season game, people were very upset. Like even Aaron Quinn was upset about it, like about comparing like Allen to Mahomes. It's like who gives a shit? Like I can enjoy both, but I'm gonna pick one. It's not like I'm taking a dump on both. I mean, it's like a fun debate. It's a barstool debate.
Sure.
Half the freaking things you see on talk shows and sports shows, it's all debate. Like as long as you're not being a dick when it's like, oh, Mahomes is, Mahomes is better because Allen sucks or something like, something like that. Like we are like, okay, like you're tearing him down too much. Like that's a little bit over the top. But if you're like saying like, hey, this quarterback's better because he's won more playoff games and he's got more yardage and touchdowns, what's wrong with saying that? I don't know. I love having debates. That's why I'm on this damn podcast with you. Don't let them. No offense. Like I don't think your tweet was like who gives a shit? Like is LeBron James going to find your tweet and be like, how dare you, Pat Moran?
No,
like, who cares? So you
like,
want to enjoy it? Yeah, whatever.
Know.
Screw that. You don't have to be so. Don't let a couple people like make you feel bad. Like
well, I agree with your point. I agree with your point about especially with the basketball, different eras, and it's different eras in
different
football
eras.
Too. I agree with you. You know, Joe Montana had wide receivers getting held and passing a lot.
Yeah,
defenses
the
a lot
like
more.
Yeah, it was horrible. Like I think Jim Kelly, if Jim Kelly was playing in today's NFL, he's got 30, 40 touchdowns easily with the way the rules are.
I'm going to be honest with you.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah. I was going to say, I'm going to be honest with you. When it comes to Josh and Patrick Mahomes at this point, and look, again, I'm a big Josh guy. Dude's on my wall multiple times. He's jumping over City Hall, by the way. I got a canvas behind me on my wall. I am a homer to an extent. As a fan, sure. But listen, stop making the comparison at this point because there is none. There's no Patrick Mahomes is the best player in football. He's the best quarterback, period. Numbers, forget about, numbers. How about accolades? Do they not matter? Dude has won 2 Super Bowls. He has won 2 Super Bowl MVPs. He has won 2 regular season MVPs. Josh ain't done none of that yet. That's not to say Josh won't. The race is not over. Maybe they're at the quarter point right now. Actually, you know what? That's wrong. Because when you say the quarter point, Tim Graham yelled at me for this years ago. That means there's only a quarter of the race left, technically. They're 25% through the race. Let's just put it that way. Their careers.
It'd be more than that because it'll be 25 years their career, I think. They're both
whatever.
Years.
Who gives a shit? But my point was this. Right now, Patrick Mahomes is the better quarterback right now. Now, Josh, in time, put together a couple of years, MVP seasons, a couple Super Bowls, and he's very capable of doing that. Then we'll revisit this conversation. But right now, the book, this year to me, the book got closed on if there was, like, I remember last year after the playoff game when Josh Allen was just in another world sensational, and a lot of people, and myself, was like, all right, well, Mahomes is 1A, Josh is 1B. Flipper, how many times did I tell you on this podcast? I'm thinking about this now in my head. I'm like, do you remember me saying this to you? If I'm the Bills, I would not trade Josh Allen for anyone in the league. Then I said, if I'm the Chiefs, I would not trade Patrick Mahomes for anyone in this league, meaning that I consider them equals. Right now, in this point of time, I no longer consider them equals. As much as I love Josh and he's a top 2 or 3 quarterback in the NFL, he ain't number 1. It's Patrick Mahomes. Simple as that.
And look, it can change. It can change next year.
Yes.
Josh can come in. He can have an MVP season. They actually get him wide receivers that aren't trash and Ken Dorsey designs plays that aren't from technical Super Bowl 1992. Yeah, he can bypass him. But right now he is. And that's why I was thinking now, people don't want to admit that. Or they say, oh, we don't need to talk about that. Why are you talking about that? You can't be. Well, fuck you. It's sports. It's Twitter. It's sports. What am I supposed to do all day? Fucking not talk about it? Yeah, right now you're right. He is. And his year. And look, I'll be the first to say I wrote off the Chiefs a little bit this year. I thought without Hill, they weren't going to be the same. I was eyeing out the Bengals for most of the season. And then because of that. And you know what they did? They did what the Bills didn't do, which was they went out, they got some role players at wide receiver. Schuster's not a bum. He was very good in Pittsburgh until he got hurt. They got a bunch of different wide receivers. They made trades. They got him weapons. And to me, the X factor of, between the Allen versus Mahomes debate is Andy Reid's a savant. He is he is the best offensive coach in the last 20 years. Easily. I can't really think of anyone right now who can X's and O's. He is the man. We do not have that here. Okay. Like, sorry, Sean McDermott is not like that on defense. He's a good defensive coach, but he can't hold a candle to his X's and O's. And that's why they are where they're at right now. I saw your tweet when you said it on after the game. Like, your last thing was like, Terry Pegula should give all the money in the world to Eric Bieniemy to be the offensive coordinator. And it's like,
I got a lot of criticism for that shit.
Yeah, you did. But I'm
Some
sure
of it
you
might
did.
Be worded. Some of it might be worded.
I can't believe that dude does not have
Chiefs
a job.
fans who are very,
to me, anyway.
very, very knowledgeable, close-knit Chiefs fans reached out to tell me, people that I believe, that there's a reason why Eric Bieniemy, and listen, not to say he might not become a great head coach someday, but when it comes to the Kansas City Chiefs and the offensive coordinator position, it was kind of like when Rex Ryan was the Bills head coach with a lot less success. Like, well, I don't remember the guy who was the defensive coordinator anymore, but I'm telling you, well, guess who was calling the plays? Rex. Kind of like offense.
But I think
it's Andy Reid. Andy Reid, my point was this. Chiefs fans are telling me this, knowledgeable ones. It's Andy Reid who is calling these plays and making a lot of these schemes. Not to say Eric Bieniemy has no significant role with the team, but it's Andy Reid at the end of the day who's putting his stamp on this offense and making a lot of these play calls.
But there are people from the Chiefs who have, like, Doug Peterson got a job when he was with Andy Reid on the Chiefs. That to me, and I don't think, like, what was it different? He had Doug Peterson do more. It's just weird. I don't get it.
I know.
I hear what you're saying. Like some people say, like, I remember I heard like LaShawn McCoy said that in like a podcast once that when he was there for his cup of coffee. I'm just saying, like, there are people who have gotten like jobs. Like, there are the Eagles coordinator just got a job with the Colts. I think the offensive coordinator got one. Or am I getting it mixed up? I don't know which one. But
the offensive coordinator got a job with the Colts. The defensive coordinator
are you telling me Sirianni
doesn't
call those plays? This guy just, it's weird. And like, yes, we can, like, there's the race thing with that, and it's like the NFL, it's been that way forever when it comes to black coaches not getting their proper recognition. And that's like an example of it. Like, I would just like, either he is horrible in interviews where he's like, I can't even fathom what he could say.
I'm not. We don't really need to have I always hate when two white people talk about a racism conversation when only one side is kind of like represented. You'll never truly know how it feels to be black. It just feels like black.
I have seen. Yeah, I just think.
So I understand the anger, and I do agree, Joe. But I'm saying in this case specifically, with Eric Bieniemy specifically, for 5 years now, he's been a part of the best offense in the NFL. And time again, he's gotten passed over by other coaches. And don't get me wrong, you're right. There needs to be more black coaches in the NFL. There's no question about it. Like, even this hiring cycle, 5 new coaches, 4 are white. It's like, whatever. But Eric Bieniemy specifically, maybe there's something about him. I don't know what it is.
I don't know. All I'm saying is this. There are coaches who have gotten jobs, I have to assume, who, if we're to believe that Bieniemy has nothing to do with the offense, that he is just there as a statue, and he's Kurt Modkins or whatever from, like,
I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, I don't think it is either, because he's there calling plays. But, like, the point is, there are white coaches who have gotten jobs for not doing a damn thing, and it's like they have an offensive guru. Like, the entire Sean McVay tree, which is all white guys, have gotten jobs. Are you telling me like Kevin O'Connell or whatever, that he wasn't calling plays? Like, that's just all I'm saying. It's like there are other guys who have been that way. It's just a mess. Anyway, moving on. Like, it's funny, you told me before this I didn't want to talk about the Super Bowl, and we talked about the Super Bowl for like a good 20 minutes here. It was more about Mahomes
and because you brought up my tweet about Eric Bieniemy, and a lot of Bills fans, not a lot of Bills fans, a lot of Chiefs fans told me it's Andy Reid who deserves the glory for the Chiefs offense more than Bieniemy. I'm just telling you what Chiefs fans told me.
Look, he could deserve more glory, but he's still a part of it. Like, all I'm saying is there are guys who have gotten jobs who I am sure had nothing. Like,
probably, I'm sure
the offensive coach.
I'm sure.
I don't know.
We don't know him.
He hasn't gotten a job.
It on the surface, it certainly seems awkward and weird and odd and questionable and debatable how he doesn't have a job. I agree with you 100%. But again, we're not in the interview rooms. So let's just move on past that. Again, going back to Mahomes, my point is at this time, I really just, he's the number one quarterback. There's no more 1A and 1B right now. He's one. Burrow and Josh Allen. There you go. There's your beef. Who's two right now? For right now, and that could change to your point. Let's take a quick break because when we come back, I actually want to kind of trend towards talking some Buffalo Bills. We have been talking a lot about Mahomes and the Chiefs, but you know what? They're a great football team, and they're the team that, along with Cincinnati, that the Bills have to get through in the playoffs, not the regular season, because they've done that the last 2 years, to get to where they want to go. So we are going to talk about the Chiefs until the Bills beat them when it matters. But anyway, quick break, come back, talk Buffalo Bills, big season takeaways. All right, I'm back here with Joe from Queens. This has been a Kansas City Chiefs appreciation podcast, I guess, so far. I've talked about a few of mine, and maybe something will come up. I'm going to give you a couple minutes here. When you look back at the Buffalo Bills season in totality, everything from the record, which, at the end of the day, it's easy to forget that they did go 13-3. But, the losses, the injuries, the off the field stuff, the ass whooping in the playoffs to Cincinnati on their home field, just this team right now, when you take a look, which I like to get opinions from you on stuff like this, because again, you got guys like Aaron and Greg over at Cover One and Bruce and Joe Marino, all these guys keep going on and on.
Bunch of nerds.
They're there
Dorks.
Multiple times a week. They're breaking down the games. They're watching the film, which you admit this.
I'm watching the film too.
You ain't watching no damn film.
I'm watching the film. Me and my wife. That's what we did on Valentine's Day. We're watching the film.
You come as a fan. These guys, including myself, come as content creators. I want your perspective as a fan. When you look at this team right now, what are maybe 1, 2, maybe 3 at the most, your biggest takeaways from this team in this season?
I will start with the positives, and then I'll go to the underbelly of the negative. My positives for this season were they went through a lot, and things that I would say no team has ever really gone through before. They had a player almost die on the field, the injuries, the everything. There's a list. Everyone knows it. They did not implode. You can definitely say they may have ran out of gas at the end. I think it's one of those things that maybe we'll see it next year. If they have a really good season next year and maybe they go to the Super Bowl or something, we can say, hey, maybe that's why they didn't win this year, because they ran out of gas. But they had a lot of character. They had a lot of moxie and character, and they really, when they had faced adversity, they had a lot of closer games this year in terms of when they were they had to put it away in the fourth quarter. So they had a little bit more gumption. Whereas I feel the 2 years before, they were blowing out teams left and right more, whereas this one, they kind of won some gritty games. Does that mean that that's going to be something they can bring into next year? I have no freaking clue. But that was, hey, they showed some perseverance. Individual accolades, I'd have to go with, I thought Matt Milano was awesome this year. Played his best year. I think he could have been a cap casualty maybe if he stunk this year, or maybe he could have got hurt. But he was awesome this year. Tremaine Edmonds did really well. Von Miller, did
Jermaine win you over? Jermaine won you over because you weren't a big fan.
I liked him.
It's okay to admit you were wrong
okay.
sometimes.
I was okay with him. I thought both sides were annoying, the people who loved him and the people who hated him. He was inconsistent.
No middle ground.
There was no middle ground. I was a middle ground guy, but I wouldn't resign him because, and this is where I'm going to get to my negative point of it, is that this team, and I said this on the last time I was on here, they need to evolve. They cannot be a defensive-oriented team where all their assets go to defense. It has to go to offense. The Philadelphia Eagles had a defense that's I think they set the sack record this year, or they had 4 defensive linemen who had over 10 sacks this year. I can't even remember the last time the Bills had 2 defensive linemen that had over 10 sacks. Here they are with this defense that kills quarterbacks. And what was the results? They gave up 38 points on the Super Bowl. And against a quarterback who had 1 leg. Defense does not matter in this league when you're going against a really good offense. It just does not. People gave shit to Trent Dilfer about a week ago when he said he didn't care about he took a dump on Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady. And I didn't agree with that part, but in a sense, he is right when he says they will never be another Baltimore Ravens dominant defense that you can have Trent Dilfer back there and win a Super Bowl. That is not happening ever. And I will say this, even if you have a dominant defense, I don't think that shit's going to last you maybe for the 3-4 years, man. I think about Seattle from they had the Legion of Boom. That was like the best defense I saw probably the last 10 years. That defense lasted like 4 or 5 years. Contracts go up. People get injured. They hit a wall. Same with the Broncos when they beat Cam Newton. Like they had a really good defense with Vaughn and DeMarcus Ware. This year, they did it again where they didn't listen to me, which is like Cardinalson, you should listen to me, where I've been talking about getting an offensive doom, getting some weapons, getting some more tight ends. Give them options. Give Ken Dorsey options. I want to see on one drive the Bills go, hey, we're gonna play 4 wide receivers. And the next drive, we're gonna have 2 tight ends that could both run down the field. And the next one, we'll have a slot wide receiver, all that shit. I've been saying that for 2 years. Give this evolve and be an offensive team. Instead, and we talked about this, them not ignoring the wide receiver position, them ignoring the offensive line position, them being just like, we need as many defensive linemen as humanly possible. That's what I took away, because they tried it again after not listening to me, and it didn't work. It did not work, because you can talk about the offensive line. That Bengals offensive line was supposed to be a train wreck when the Bills faced them. And you know what? It didn't matter. You know why? Because Joe Burrow got the ball off fast. And that's where if you have a good scheme that can get the ball off fast, doesn't matter if you got Bruce Smith back there. You can get the ball quick. You can't really hold guys anymore like you used to be able to back in the day. And that's why they need to, I hope they're sitting there and they're not sitting there with their Carolina blueprint and going, we need another defensive lineman because Ed Oliver's going to be leaving next year. So we got to get more defensive linemen. Fuck that. That's my takeaway from them. That's the biggest one. I want offensive weapons this offseason. I want offensive weapons next offseason. I want it to be like as many weapons like Arnold Schwarzenegger's going to Iraq to kill some people and he's got like a bazooka and all this shit like he's in Commando. That's what I want. That is my takeaway from them this year. Like, it's something that I've been talking about for the last year and a half, roughly. Like, you tried it with your defense, it ain't working because you can beat the Jacoby Brissetts of the world or whoever. But when you go against an elite offense, you got to outscore them. And it was unfair this year for Josh. It was unfair for Josh, for Diggs, even to a certain extent, like Ken Dorsey. Like they had they panicked. They signed Cole Beasley and John Brown off the streets because when those guys had not played in like the entire year. I don't even know what John Brown did last year. Like, that's it. That is my my fan takeaway, as you call it, or whatever the fuck. But that's basically where I'm at.
It's interesting because if the Bills do decide that they need to invest more in this offense beyond the draft,
sure,
then it will come at the expense of losing. I think they're going to lose Jordan Poyer for sure, regardless.
Sure.
I hope I'm wrong, but I think he's gone. I almost just dropped the rhyme there. And then Tremaine Edmonds. If you're going to go get a $10 million a year left guard or a right tackle, and I don't even know names right now. I will soon enough, potential free agents. I don't have a list in front of me. I don't care. Point being is you're going to lose on this defense to gain to the offense because the Bills don't have that cap luxury that they've had the past couple of years. Now, I'm not saying, by the way, for the record, so we're clear, not saying you're wrong. It's kind of weird the way this team is made up. You invest in Josh Allen and you did make a trade for Stephon Diggs, but I agree with you that there hasn't been enough investment in the offense. You have a very fair point that the way to win championships in this league is to outscore teams. The Chiefs have done it now 2 times, but and then the Rams, even though that was a defensive battle in the Super Bowl, not expected. But anyway, the Rams were a high-flying offensive team. They traded for Odell Beckham last year. So, and Von Miller. But anyway, it's tough because of the cap situation. I think my biggest takeaways with this team right now is the coaches. I have more questions than answers with the coaches. You're not firing Sean McDermott. I'm not suggesting they should fire Sean McDermott. Let's get that clear. That said, if the Bills don't go any farther next year, this guy's got to be on the hot seat. because if this is as far as he can get them, and I think it's fair to wonder that because Sean McDermott is not the same coach in the playoffs that he is in this or in the regular season. They're two different types of coaches. I'm sorry, but we've seen it 3 times, 3 years in a row now. And it's not even debatable either. Leslie Frazier, I don't know what it is, man. I still get angry if there's one thing about the Bengals game that makes me angry, it's not any of the players and how badly they got beat. It's some of the defensive calls. They got beat out of blitz on the first series. Teron Johnson blitzed. Burrow beat the blitz. I don't know that I saw that play again the rest of the game. Then they got 7, 8 guys at the line of scrimmage, and they got cornerbacks playing 9 yards off the ball. I just don't get it with Leslie Frazier. Ain't going nowhere. I knew he wasn't going anywhere. And Ken Dorsey, not sold on him. In fairness, Brian Dable did not have success early on with the Bills, and I remember a lot of people calling for his head after just 1 year. So I guess we have to wait and see with Ken Dorsey, because whether you like it or not, he's going to be back. But I want to circle back because my biggest takeaway is something you said kind of in passing. My biggest takeaway is that the Bills blew the season, including the playoffs, when they lost to the Vikings. And I said, and I told this to Joe Yurden. I think the Bills losing that Vikings game when they were up. Look, they also lost to the Jets and the Dolphins, and you can make a case the Bills should have won those games, but that's debatable. The Bills were up 3 scores in the second half against the Minnesota Vikings at home. Okay, Cam Lewis has to knock down a ball and they win. Josh Allen has to not fumble and they win. They win that game, Joe, because they did not lose another game until the playoffs. They win that game to get the number 1 seed. Listen, I don't care about the home field, and I know you've never cared about the home field, and we've had many conversations about this. What I do care about is this team. Matt Milano said it. Josh Allen said it. Lots of players said it. They were spent. They were spent. It was obvious. They were running on fumes. After what happened to DeMar Hamlin, they were running on fumes. It took Naheem Hines scoring 2 kickoff return touchdowns to beat the Patriots. By the way, the Patriots had 3 touchdown drives of 75 yards that game, the finale. And then you're playing a third-string quarterback at home in the playoffs and you win by a field goal. This team was running on fumes. They were spent. They needed to win and get the number 1 seed to have the bye. They needed a bye week. This team needed a week to physically and mentally get better, to regroup, to get their muscles, their bodies, their minds right. And they didn't do that because they lost to the Vikings and they were dead ducks against the Bengals. Had they won, they would have played Jacksonville in the first round, which forget about who they played because they could have played the Bengals or the Chiefs. But that was not the Buffalo Bills that we saw most this year. That was a spent team running on fumes.
I disagree with that because I think that was the Bills were not. They won 13 games, but they were not impressive after the Green Bay game. They just weren't. That's the thing. So you could talk about like they were spent. They had like the DeMar Hamlin.
They were spent.
They were, but they didn't look good even in parts in November. Look, after every Bills game, the entire narrative on Bills Twitter was, or at least my was, you can be happy they won, but you have to also go, they have some blemishes. That happened almost every game they won. Every game. The only game I can remember where I was like, I got no notes after like the Green Bay game was like that Patriots game on Thursday night where it was like, even though they won 24-10, wasn't a big, like they just kind of controlled the whole game. Like there was no doubt. They kind of went through it. But like every other game, there was like these blemishes. So like, yes, could it have been better if they had the week off? They can replenish, sure. But look, everyone else, all these teams play. They didn't even play 17 games. They played 16. So like, but everyone plays these games. I get it. They went through a lot.
I'm not an
as I said,
maker.
I give them. They went through a lot. I think deep down they would have lost against the Bengals or Chiefs. I just think they just didn't. They looked inconsistent. Look, they were inconsistent all year. And even look, going back to last year, the worst thing that I've said this before, the worst thing that happened, I think what expectations were when we left the 13-second game, that Patriots game when they obliterated them. I think a lot of people, I think even the Bills organization thought those 2 games were who the Bills really were, and they completely forgot about them being 11-6. They completely forgot about them getting toasted in Jacksonville, getting blown out by the freaking Colts. Even the December when they made that run and they like won 4 in a row, they weren't that impressive. Like they beat the Falcons like by like a touchdown or like 10. It wasn't a good game. Like they've been inconsistent since. I still think 2020 was their best year. Like you want to talk about like, when they blew it, like people talk about 13 seconds. yeah, that could have been like, I know you think they could have gone in the Super Bowl and won. I
They
think
would have
about
won
20.
to the Super Bowl and won.
I don't know about that. I
They
think
weren't
2020,
losing. They were not losing at home to
2020,
Cincinnati.
was their year because that was when Josh Allen was playing at a high level for the whole year. They had way more weapons. They had John Brown. They had Beasley was healthy. They had Gabe Davis. They were so deep at wide receiver, and they lost. They got handed their asses to them in the championship game where McDermott was kind of a wimp and all that sort of stuff. But I just feel, look, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, look, we'll never know. I mean, we'll obviously never know if the Bills had to buy how much and wouldn't have made a difference. But and all your points, none of them are wrong. But back to what I'm saying about how this team needed a week of rest badly. Let's look at the Kansas. You said the Bills won, but they didn't impress you a lot of the back half of the season after the Green Bay game. You said that
they were just
you're not
blemishes.
wrong.
Like
there were blemishes. Okay, let me go through something with you real quick here. The Kansas City Chiefs, who were the number 1 seed, let me run off to you their last 5 games of the year. Okay, they played the shitty ass Denver Broncos, who underachieved all year, and Kansas City won by 4 points. Then they played at the goddamn Houston Texans, and it took overtime. Yeah. The Chiefs beat them in overtime. The Houston Texans, man. Then they played Seattle, and they won that game, and it was at home. They won that by 2 touchdowns, kind of like how you said the Bills beat New England. Same score, in fact, 24-10. All right? Then they played Denver again, and they won at home by a field goal. And then they finished the season, and they beat the Raiders, who were running for the bus, and Carr didn't even play. He quit on the team. You know what I mean? So the Kansas City Chiefs won games, but were not impressive. Close games against pretty shitty teams, but you know what they got? They got themselves a week off, and they got themselves right. That bye means a lot. It meant a lot more than having the home field.
Well,
just telling you, man. That's how I feel anyway.
I understand, but your point with the Chiefs, like them having their blemishes, the Chiefs are a team that's gone to 5 straight AFC championship games. They're a team that I feel mentally they can get away with kind of coasting and then turn it on because they know what it's like to go to the Super Bowl. They've been there. There's been teams like, the Golden State, like, we watch NBA, like there's a lot of teams like during the regular season, they coast. They're like, they don't give a shit. They just want to get in. And then when the playoffs start, they turn it up. The Chiefs to me are kind of like that team because they got rings. They've beaten the Bills. Like they beaten them in the playoffs. And like, I give them the benefit of the doubt than I do the Bills in terms of that. But yes, sure. They could have had that extra week. I do think it would have helped. I still think they would have probably lost. I just didn't like. I just think pound for pound, the Chiefs and the Bengals are better. They just have better weapons. Going back to the offense, they have better weapons on offense. I think they also have a better offensive mind in both places, and the Bills do right now. It could look, Ken Dorsey could evolve. Maybe he'll get better, etc. But like that's just how it is right now with them. So. And one thing I want to go back to, this is your 5-year anniversary next week. I'm pretty sure you and I have had this conversation every February if you've had me on about the cap. The cap is fake. I know everyone's panicking already. I know your boy Greg Thompson's already got the charts out and how we can't rework the deals and it's going to be a nightmare and we're not going to fit people. Look, every year this happens. There are teams that are under the cap, that are just barely under the cap or above it. They make some moves and they throw salary down the road, and then they can get guys. I know Bean said that in the but he said the same shit last year. And I know Worrell said something to him afterwards, like, you said this last year. Well, we got to pay this guy. They can rework some deals, and hopefully I don't want to go too much on the cap, because it's like they're not paying, like if they're they don't have, I would say they got the Josh Allen contract, but I think they can make some moves. I don't think it's going to be like them bringing in $120 million player, but every year, like I just feel they will. I don't want to look at the cap, man. Maybe I'm being a little bit of a dick to Greg, but like I just every year I feel like we go into this where we're talking about the cap a little bit too much, and there are teams that make moves. So that's just my like. I hope they're aggressive. Look, I know the wide receiver market's pretty thin. But I'm down with trading out Oliver for like a wide receiver. Like you want to I know people have like done fantasy trades with like the guy from Oakland, the slot guy. I don't know what his name is, but it was Hunter Renfrow. Yeah, thank you. Like, fine. Like, they just have to change a little bit of they need to get ahead of the curve when it comes to offense. This is the year, that you do it. This is the off season that you got to do it, man. Because but also the most important thing too, they got to start drafting some guys who are they got to start developing guys better. Because if you're going into I know I'm talking out both sides of my ass and my mouth over here, but like if you're worried about the cap, the way you unworry about the cap is if you have guys in their second, first, third year on their rookie deals playing very well. I cannot think of name me a guy who's on their rookie deal who you're like, man, they can't lose that guy. Like, thank God for him. Like who? Rousseau, maybe? Like, it's just kind of like they're not having like these young guys like step up where you're like, man, I really have confidence in that guy. Like I'm so glad that they have a cheap asset that's on their first or second year. They don't have that right now.
One thing I don't agree with your assessment of the Buffalo Bills and their offense, and we have no choice. We have to shelf this conversation for another time because there's something else that I need to get to. But I don't agree with you when you say the Bills don't have enough weapons. I think the problem is the Bills don't know how to deploy their weapons good enough. James Cook could be a great weapon. He had 0 targets against the Bengals. Dawson Knox showed near the end of the year he could be a very productive tight end. Where was he the first 8, 9, 10 games in the game plans? Isaiah McKenzie was brought back and given an elevation to a starting job because of some of the things he could do. Where was a lot of that? There's a lot of talent and speed on the Bills. Can they use more? Yes. And they're going to have to get more. And they will. I think they will anyway. But my point is, this team has weapons. I blame more just the way they were deployed. And especially, again, the James Cook shit really bothers me to not have even a target against that game. But we'll talk. Listen, man, we still got
I give you, yes, it is accurate. Like they have these running backs, they don't throw to them. It's mind-boggling. Like, yes, they could definitely do that.
It's annoying. Bubble screens and again, just the tight end uses. It's just no consistency, and that bothers me. But again, we'll talk. I want to talk weapons down the road, because before we get out of here, while we have time, I do want to talk about this division. So my biggest takeaway, or co-biggest takeaway, was that I think the Bills desperately needed to get that week off, and they didn't. And I think that really hurt them. We'll never know if they would have beat the Bengals or not. My other takeaway is the easy peasy, 3 straight AFC East division championships now for the Bills? 3? The easy peasy route to the AFC East. I mean, they got a little bit of resistance this year from Miami. But anyway, to me, I think that shit is over now. Now you're talking about a division that I think is ready to be a complete dogfight. And I'm going to talk about this a lot during the offseason. You want to call it a hot take, call it a hot take. You want to get mad at me, not you, but some fans might. I'm just going to say it. I think if you take away quarterback, which you can't just take away quarterback, because quarterback's the most important position, not just in football, maybe in sports. But the New York Jets from player 2 to 53, I think are just as good, if not better, than the Bills right now. I really do. The Jets are my look out for them team next year. They're way better at running back. Breece Hall, who tore his ACL last year, was phenomenal as a rookie. They got good backup running backs. None of their receivers right now, like Garrett Wilson's not as good as Stephon Diggs right now, but their collection of receivers with Elijah Moore and Berrios and Corey Davis, they're good. The offensive line's pretty good. I think tight end and offensive line is sort of a wash, but that Jets defense is freaking good. That front four dominates Buffalo. They match up really, really good against the Bills. CJ Mosley is a beast at linebacker. Sauce Gardner, as a rookie, is one of the best corners in the NFL already. You want to talk about a team that really hit on their draft. Holy shit, bro. Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner, and Breece Hall, all on the same draft. But they need a quarterback. And they're going to get one. That's my point. They might trade for Aaron Rodgers. And again, this is Tuesday night, so something crazy happens on Wednesday. Scratch this. But Aaron Rodgers might get traded. They might find Aaron Rodgers. They might sign Derek Carr. They might get Jimmy G. Any of these guys will be Joe Montana compared to fucking Mike White or Zach Wilson, whoever these bummy-ass quarterbacks, Joe Flacco, that they've had. The Jets, let's start there. I think the Jets are a very dangerous team right now. With 2 first-round picks, by the way, this spring.
Yeah, I think I agree with all of that. I don't know if I buy them if they get Jimmy Garoppolo, though. I think I know, hey, he did well in San Fran. I don't know, he's not very good. He's like below average. Like, yeah,
a
he's
lot better than what
but
they had.
yeah, I guess, yeah, but I don't think that he's not scaring me. I know that they did well in San Fran, but like, I don't know. I don't like Jimmy G. I don't know. I'll say this though.
Like he's been to 2 or 3 championship games.
Yeah, but I get that. And like, if you want to compare like the Jets roster to the San Fran roster, yeah, sure, maybe that's the possibility. He does tend to get hurt a lot. I don't see. I definitely see it with Carr. I can see it with Rodgers. I will say this though, that could work against them is Nate Hackett. Like, we saw what he did in Denver, and he was awful. Like, he was awful, and he wasn't very good with the Bills when he had EJ. He wasn't very good with Bortles. I don't know. I kind of wonder.
It makes me think Aaron Rodgers might end up there, though, man. That is
Aaron Rodgers. I would look, if they get Carr or if they get Rodgers, I will definitely be on that. Like, holy shit, we gotta watch out. If they get Garoppolo,
they're already right there. They're right there, man. I'm telling you, they were right there with Mike White. I'm just telling you, the Jets match up really good against the Bills, man. That's just one team.
You got me. You got me.
What about Miami? Okay. I mean, you're talking about Miami too. Let's not forget about them. This is a team that before Tua got hurt was right there. So they certainly got the weapons to beat the Bills with Tyreek Hill and Waddle. Lots of guys.
They got a better defensive coordinator now.
Them. And they got Big Fangio. They got a new coordinator. And there's a lot of talent on that front four for Miami. They got Christian Wilkins, who was giving the Bills fits, and I know fans hate him. I hate him too, personally, to be honest with you. Sure. Jalen Phillips looks really good. Bradley Chubb kind of looked like a bust last year after giving up a lot to give him a first-round pick, but he's still a name. Who knows what he'll end up doing? They got a pretty good Javon Holland's a hell of a safety. Point being, this team, if Tua can stay healthy, which of course is a big if, and that's if they even commit to him, and maybe they surprise you and they go on and they get a Jimmy G or somebody like that. Miami Dolphins got a lot of weapons. And the New York Jets got a lot of weapons. And the Patriots are at least competitive. They've been right there the last couple of years. They're 7th in cap space going into this offseason. They're going to add to that offense. I don't think they're quite as good as New England or Miami. I mean, the Jets or Miami, and obviously Buffalo. Here's a point that I'm getting at, Joe. I feel like this division, for the most part, has been a cakewalk the last couple of years. You could go get your AFC Bills, AFC East championship hats in the beginning of October the last couple of years. They ain't doing that shit this year. This division is going to be stacked. It's going to be a bloodbath.
I agree with that. I think it's going to be a lot tougher. I mean, the Bills came up at the right time when those teams were all going downhill. And last year, as you kind of, I'm not going to reiterate what you just said. I agree with that. That's where this offseason, the Bills cannot rest on their laurels. They just can't. They gotta make some moves because those teams are coming. They probably have I don't have their cap in front of me, but I'm assuming the Jets have cap room because they have all. That's the thing. You develop young core where you have them for cheap. And they're like, thank God we have these guys for like 4 or 5 years and they're cheap and we could go for it. Whereas the Bill, like I said before, they don't. Who's on their rookie deal right now that where you're like, oh, I love this guy for the Bills.
Right.
Hardly anyone, really.
And to be fair, too, with the Jets, they're Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner were both top 10 picks. I mean, so it's not like they reached. Breece Hall was a late first-round pick. A lot of people thought the Bills were going to get Breece Hall. Anyway, that kid looked like a stud before he got hurt. I'm happy with James Cook, though. But anyway, my point is, these teams are really good. I think it's going to be a bloodbath. I was wrong about one thing. I said the Jets had 2 first-round picks. They only have 1. They have a top 13 pick. So, they're going to add. It'll be interesting. Again, I don't want to dive into what the Bills may or may not do yet. Let's start to see, because we will start to see now. I think there's going to be restructures coming up. Not going to be a lot of cuts because I've looked at this roster and the cap savings. Maybe Isaiah McKenzie, maybe Saron Neal. There's not a lot of guys that really they're getting a lot of cap benefits for cutting. I think you're going to see some big restructures. I think Josh Allen's definitely going to get restructured. If they want Jermaine Edmonds back, and by the way, what I hear is they do. I mean, everyone hears that, but what I hear is that's like the priority. Put it this way. Here's what I want to say. Here's what I want to say.
I can't say. No, let me say something.
It would be a shock to me if Poyer comes back. It would be a bigger shock to me if Jermaine Edmonds is not back. Let's just say that.
How many high priced? Who do you got next year making at least $10 million on the Bills? If you resign
I don't
Edmonds?
even know.
Like Edmonds is going to make Edmonds getting paid, Milano's getting paid, Trey White's getting paid, Micah Hyde's like they have like 6 or 7 guys getting paid on defense.
Von
and on
Miller.
offense, And on offense, they got three guys getting maybe four. I hope
see.
look,
I could be wrong.
I like Tremaine. I would look. You want to sign Tremaine and then sign another offensive guy or two that are really good, then fine. I'll sign up for that. But if you're
I know your take. You're willing to lose Tremaine if it means getting a good offensive lineman or a wide receiver. I do. I get that. Before I let you go, real quick, a couple of things I wanted to touch on quickly here. Kim Bagula last week. We didn't talk last week, but we finally got an update from about Kim, courtesy of her daughter Jessica. She wrote an article for the Tribune. I don't want to say there was a lot to it, but it was revealing in a way. I mean, we did learn some about Kim, but did you without getting into? I mean, we don't need to deep dive into Kim's condition, and frankly, that doesn't benefit anyone, whether it's us talking or people listening. But I did want your take, your thought on maybe the news coming. Are you surprised that it came from a Pagula member directly and that this never did get leaked out through somebody in the media over the last even just handful of couple months?
I'm surprised it didn't, but I also think people knew, like her.
Oh, I know a couple people knew.
Yeah, I knew a couple people knew, and then I knew too, and that irritates me and scares me a little bit. I mean, let's talk about the media. Like, since you say I like to ball bust or be critical, this is me being critical. I was listening to a podcast where a person said like the Pagulas are treated like they're covered like a family instead of business owners. And I think that really like hits it. Like they are not. They own a franchise. They own two franchises where Kim is the president. She handles a lot. They have presented her like she is, before this whole thing happened, like she was on these business meetings, all that sort of shit. And like we got $800 million coming to them, $1 billion, maybe more, who the hell knows, for this new stadium. And like, I think you have to like cover that and find out what's going on. And even if I don't need you to be there at the hospital and like getting updates and having a helicopter outside of it, but like pressing them to be like, what is the plan right now while she is out? And like, I think it's a very accurate thing. Like, what is the plan? And that was one thing. Look, Jesse's letter was very nice. I get it. But like, she kind of went off a little bit about how it's none of anyone's business or whatever. That's bullshit. I get it from her point of view. Like, she's a daughter, a mom, but from a public standpoint, your team owns, your parents own this team. They're in negotiations for $100 billion stadium or whatever the hell it is right now. You have to, like, we should know a little bit. Like, not like, as I said, we don't need constant updates, but just like, what is the plan? Who is in these meetings with like polling cars or the state? They had it to where they hired a business person on the Sabres side, and like the Pagulas, they told Tim Graham like, oh, that hire had nothing to do with Kim Pagula's health, which I'm kind of like, that's kind of a little bit weird. Like, if she's not coming back, which is kind of what her daughter kind of insinuated, like she's not going to be the same, then it does seem like you hired this person to kind of take the burden off her plate. So I still think I think people knew about it, and I think they didn't want to release it because of fear of backlash from PSE. I told you the story. I've heard people like that, like they're very forceful, PSE, when it comes to those outlets. And let's be honest, the Bills, they are the biggest institution, I think, in any city in this country. In New York City for sports teams, because they run the whole news cycle, everything. I mean, I got like front page news of like, hey, let's see how Bills Elvis felt about the Bills losing in the playoffs. You're not getting that shit in New York City. No one's going to care about what Fire Marshal Bill says to put on the front page. And like, it's not. You can't tell me that you
can't compare New York City, one of the biggest cities in the world, to a mid to small market like Buffalo.
Okay, whatever. I don't think they're going to get on the front page. I don't think any fan in like, after like, let's get a front page story on this or that. And I say all this because like, they know that that's what runs the gambit. I was reading an article the other day about how the Buffalo News has cut like staff since Lee Enterprises bought them. They've cut staff tremendously in like the last 5-6 years, like half. You know what staff they haven't cut down? The sports department. That tells you everything there is to know about how much that team matters in terms of that, and they do not want to piss them off. And I'm sorry, like it's just like one of those things where I see that, and like I constantly am questioning like the motives of a lot of these journalists like out there. Like, why aren't you covering it this way? Why, like, you really like, I want to respect their privacy. Like, come on, like that's you go to, it's like, got Alan Pergament bitching about like how fucking news reporters are wearing Bill sweaters. It's like, why don't you write about that, about the objectivity of like, you're not talking about this. And then like, I feel a lot of people, I feel like people did hold out on it. I'm sorry. Like,
Alan Pergament is waging a war that he will never win. I admire him for standing up
everyone.
for what
but
he
like,
believes.
Am I wrong? Like, tell me if I'm wrong. Like, is that where I'm supposed to say? Like, the day that came out, I thought about that, and I was like, hey, I'm not tweeting about that because this is her. It's kind of like what you said about the LeBron James. It's LeBron James's day to shine. I was like, this is her day to shine. But now it's a week later. I'm just letting you know, like, yeah, I don't know how that didn't come out. I think it is people's business a little bit in terms of like it is like, look, I just want them to like, they don't like, as I said, and I also say this too. I did take that letter as I do feel. Maybe I've watched Succession too many times. I don't freaking know.
You probably have. The show sucks.
You hate that show, but I feel like post Kim and Terry, like I feel like Jesse's gonna take over. Like it's gonna be. I feel like it's gonna be her and her husband. Her husband works there. I have no inside info. I feel like that will probably.
It's going to be like the McMahon family in WWE, old WWE. But
well, hopefully not, because like Vince is an asshole and hated Hunter and his daughter and everyone.
Sure.
So I don't think they hate each other like that. But like, that's my take on it. On that, go ahead.
Last thing I'll say about the Pagulas is they don't owe it to people to have daily updates. Every little thing needs to be chronicled. But at some point. The statement, I think it was 8 months or so ago, when something came out, respect our privacy at the time, and people did. Obviously, the media certainly did. And I just wish at some point they would have said, treatment's ongoing, progress slow, blah, 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 without getting into specifics. But, they could have said something, just a quick little 2-paragraph freaking press release or something that might have gotten conspiracy theorists off their back. I mean, it wasn't a day that went by in the last 2 months that I didn't hear that Kim Pegula was dead on Twitter. Somebody said Kim Pegula would be dead, or they started talking about the vaccination. This is what did it to her. I'm certainly not going down that rabbit hole a minute and 12 into this podcast. My point is this. I wish PSC would have put out periodically just some kind of update, or there's no change. Kim is still.
I just wanted them to say who while she's out, who is running the show on the business side for both.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all I wanted. Like you could say while Kim Pegula is recovering from this illness or whatever, this asshole is going to be in charge of this department, and that asshole is going to be in charge of this department.
Just a little something. Sure, I agree.
Yeah, because like look, they presented her as like being like the business savant there. It's not like
she kind of was Mary. Man.
Yeah, this isn't Mary Wilson, who was like Ralph's, wife, whom we never saw until he died, and then she came out like she wasn't running shit. She was just there, like, hey, I'm here, hi. Like they presented her as like this big beacon of like the business side of it for both teams. General podcast talking about it, for God's sake.
I know, on a personal level, like everyone else, I hope that she makes a full recovery, because I do think she had, and hopefully someday she will have, more to give to this community with sports and stuff outside of sports. Anyway, real quick here, you mentioned an article in the Buffalo News in Bill's Elvis, and I have to say this, and me, unlike you, who's very critical, chaotic with the media, and you don't give a shit, and I don't blame you, by the way. I'm the opposite, and I admit this, and I'll freely admit this. It doesn't benefit me to be overly critical about a bunch of guys and women who are on my show, who, for the most part, I am fond of on a personal level, in some cases professionally as well. I think do a lot of great work, and that includes a lot of people at the Buffalo News. But I will say this, the articles that they've done, the series of articles that they've done with these fans, these super fans over the last handful of months are bullshit. I think they're terrible. I think it's a waste of ink or web space, whatever you want to call it. And here's the worst part about it. Not necessarily you, but maybe you, but certainly a lot of people out there, people like Bill's Elvis, who by all accounts, and I talked to a lot of people, Dude is a great dude. But when you constantly go to the same people, the same 2 or 3 people, asking them for their take, making them part of the story, bigger than the story, what they, of course, you're going to say, well, who gives a flying fuck what Bills Elvis or Kristen Kimmick or this person or that person thinks about the Bills and that they were supposed to be in Atlanta? You're making the fan, you're putting it right on the tee for fans to start resenting this shit because it's the same people who are getting interviewed for these stories, and they're treating these people who are everyday people, and they are super fans, but they're treating them like they're fucking celebrities. And there's no way that's not going to, if you're a normal person, it's not going to get to you at some point. And it does. And I think a lot of fans have turned on some of these people unfairly because they're constantly getting asked by the Buffalo News mainly, or some other media outlets for their takes on everything. It's overkill and it's stupid and it's bad. That is bad journalism to me. I hate it.
Look, I'm not big. I don't particularly care. I've cut down on me making fun of a lot of the Billsagram influencers this season. I really did make it a point to like not make fun of all of them. My whole thing, and this goes back to what I just told you before, like what gets on the front page. If you have reporters, news reporters I have to go and talk to Bills Elvis and talk to the Bills Mafia Babe president, or talk to all these people. When there's like a story there, a serious story of like what's going on with Kim, what's going on with the business side of it, and they're using their assets towards that instead of like what's real news, that's what annoys me. Because it's like,
me too.
That's because like you could have those assets going to other things. Like I wanted to know what the hell was going on with the Bills and Kim Pagula and all that. Like I wanted to, because I was like, or even the stadium or whatever. Like, and I think it's a way, because these editors are clever, where it's an easy story to do. Like you could easily call them up. They're not going to reject it. They want to get their publicity. Fine, get that. It's a lot easier to do that and turn that around than, hey, I'm going to call everyone in the Pagula's front office. I'm going to call their family friends. I'm going to call the doctors in Florida to find out what the fuck is going on.
To
who's
your
in charge.
point,
it's a lot harder to do that.
You think they run the Buffalo? And your point was you think that PSE basically runs the Buffalo News.
I wouldn't say run the Buffalo News, but I think they have influence. Like
heavily. Heavy influence.
They don't want to piss off. All but right. I'm saying because that sort of those stories, like you push that out. That is a story that you're wasting probably an hour and a half, 2 hours on. Whereas if you're doing like what I just mentioned, that's going to take longer. It's easy traffic hit because Bills Elvis has got a bunch of followers and the Bills Babes handle's got a bunch of followers. You retweet that and it gets viral. Then you can tell ad agencies like, look at this article we had. It had 1,000 retweets. Like, give us $1 for our for your beer company on the side of it.
I agree with that. They are creating celebrities by continuously going back to the same 2 or 3 people who, again, as far as I know, and I do know some of them personally, are good people. But you don't need to keep asking the same people every time. How does Bills Elvis feel about not being in Atlanta? How does Bills Elvis feel about Josh Allen doing this or that? It's just the same people over and over. If I have every time there's the story, well, let me see what Joe from Queens thinks about this. After a while, I'm like, fuck what Joe from Queens thinks. I want to hear from other people. So I don't blame them. I think they're being manipulated to some extent by the media. And in turn, at least some fans anyway are sick of it. It's like, all right, enough with this guy or enough with this woman, man. Enough is enough. Do a better job. Just, it bothers me. And I do agree with you. Like, stories, those aren't stories, man. Now, special interest stories.
And the thing is like, I get you have
twice. When you do it 5, 6, 7 times in a couple months, it's like, come on already.
No, it's annoying, but it's also like you do those types of stories like at the beginning of the season. Like you don't do it like at the end, and then it's constant. Like I'll see a video, like I follow like the TV channels, and they'll have like them on. Like, oh, it's just, I don't know. It's like, as I said, that's why, like, again, going back to the Kim thing, like they that is a meal ticket for those outlets. That is why I feel like
it's not just them, by the way. It's not just them. It's primarily them. I mean, they're the ones. There's other outlets who continuously are going to fans too, more and more for.
Yeah, the video. But I'm saying if it's like the front page, if it's like the front page, and then it's like the second block in a newscast, like what the fuck? That's why I say like I don't think that's it's. And again, look, those people want to get their 15 minutes of fame. Like they got branding and they want to sell Bill's Elvis shirts. I don't fucking know what Elvis he sells, but like I get that, I guess. Like, you know, but like for them, but like
I don't blame any of them. I don't blame them at all. Who doesn't want a little publicity, especially if it's positive? Who doesn't?
I just wish they weren't so
want their
corny,
name out there.
all.
Who doesn't want to see
Sure,
their name in print? You know what I'm saying? I just feel like
yeah,
kind of taking advantage, just going to the same people in the same well. And the only reason why I wouldn't even give a shit, if you don't like my kind of like how I feel like on Facebook or Twitter, you don't like this person and what they have to say, don't fucking read it. Scroll on, unfriend them, mute them, block them, whatever. Valentine's Day. We're taping this Valentine's Day. This is your first Valentine's Day married. We're taping this late at night. In fact, we're actually now.
We're at the 90-minute mark, which if anyone's still
we're going to
here,
be done and we will be off the air in the next.
The code word
is
15. If you DM me 15, you get nothing from me. Anyways, go ahead.
Did you? How was your first married Valentine's Day? I didn't.
Well, first off, it was my second married Valentine's Day, but I will tell you what we did. Yeah. Yes, I will tell you what we did because you're going to be super jealous. We went out to eat. No one cares about that. We just went out to eat. Afterwards, it's kind of, how can I say it? It's like it's a beer and cheese place. But basically you walk in and you have like cheese on the one side, like you order cheese sandwiches, and on the left side you have a cooler of beer. They have drafts. It's kind of, I wish I could tell you. I think it's a little bit like Fatty's, which is in Buffalo. People may have heard of it, but like kind of similar vibe, except there's cheese. Anyways, we went there to play bingo, and because they had bingo night tonight, so we played bingo, and I won the first game of bingo with there was 20, 30 people there. I won the first bingo, which was I won fondue of all things. That's what I won, fondue. And the last game where you had to cover the entire bingo board, the wife won, and she won a $50 gift card to that place. So that was our, and I asked her, I'm like, hey, do you want to play bingo? Because she loves bingo. We played bingo. We went on vacation, and I don't know. I'm an old man, I guess, because I love bingo. I think bingo's hilarious, and it's all luck. But that's what we did. So it was fun. I would implore everyone who is under whatever age you may think, oh, bingo's for my mom or my grandparents. Bingo's fun. Give it a try. And it was. I think you should do that next week when you're with your Tyler Dunn. You guys should play bingo for the last hour of it, maybe, and just play bingo. Yeah, bingo's awesome.
I don't think that's going to happen. In fact, I'm quite confident that's not.
You should have a chicken wing contest. Chicken wing contest. Eating all of them at once. See who can eat that.
That is going to do it for this show. Follow Joe on
Draft Twitter. Get offensive weapons, Brandon Bean. Sorry, I know you're in. Go ahead.
Follow Joe on Twitter. Do know that his opinions do not necessarily reflect my opinions at all. I thought you had some good football takes. I thought you had some really lousy media takes here at the end. I'm just keeping it real with you, bro.
What media takes? I don't even know. We'll talk about this out on air because I don't even know what the hell you're talking about.
I'd rather have somebody on the podcast like you from time to time where we just sit there and we got to bicker at it and go at it. It kind of makes this show a little more fun, at least for me personally, do. But anyway, seriously, guys, thank you for listening, for watching. And we'll be back with a brand new episode tomorrow. It's Casual Friday with Joe's favorite person, Aaron Quinn.
My boy.
I was gonna ask you if you had any last words, but I don't even know if I can.
Yeah, I got two. Last word is Aaron Quinn. I'm coming for your spot, taking you out. That's it. Andre the Giant, the attraction here, taking you out.
All right, guys. Thank you. What a fucking chaotic episode this was. All right, guys. I will see you on. Actually, I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.